I think what I've learned about being cool is like, I think it's about just being cool with yourself.
So you're only 7 cool with yourself.
I know. I feel like that's actually quite low. Maybe it's more like an 8. You don't want to be too big-headed.
Hello and welcome to the Process Podcast. I still don't have an intro. I'm determined to never have an intro. I'm very aware not having intros become the bit of me doing the intro, etc. It's all meta, but it's all good. Nevertheless, we'll constantly be giving you good people on this. Sure, that's a way of doing this. And speaking of the good people, I have Katie with me today on today's episode. Hello, Katie.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm feeling good, yeah.
Nice. So to put you in the spot here, how I like to start a lot of these podcasts is going into how we first met.
Nice.
So how did we first meet?
We first met at a poetry night, I think. But I feel like we chatted properly when we did the poetry takeaway.
Yes, that sounds right. Like there's a lot of people I will meet at these nights and follow on Instagram and whatnot. And it's like,
yeah,
I know you, I recognize you, and I will see you at things. And it's like, we were saying off camera level of like, so many nights will finish late and I don't have time to hang out. So like Poetry Takeaway, I think was the first time we had the chance to be like, we're in the same space and have time to actually talk for a little bit, which was quite nice.
Yeah, that was really nice. Yeah, went to the pub after.
How did you find the Poetry Takeaway?
It was good. I was really nervous that day because I'd not done it before. And I was like, got myself intimidated by all the other people that I was in the van with, including you. And then got in the van and then was like, okay, this is fine. This is nice. This is good.
Well, for any of our listeners who may not know of it, can you explain what the Poetry Takeaway is whilst I take a casual sip of my beer?
The Poetry Takeaway is, it's an old burger van. It's very glamorous that goes up and down the country, writing poems for people, lots of different people in loads of different settings. And the only thing that you can order from the Poetry Takeaway is a poem. So you tell some of your story to one of us, one of the poets in the van, and we turn it into a poem for you within about 15 minutes, and then you come back and we give you your order and read it, and that's what it is. It's great. It's really good. It's
a really fun thing too, and like it's a fun thing as a poet to do it because there's always that challenge of like, I think with our natural writing we're very precious about what we put out and what we're doing there, so it's nice with the Poetry Takeaway to kind of be like, I've got a time limit. It's got to be out in the world now. So I have to make a decision to have the thing now.
Have the thing. And I remember having a realization on the morning of that Poetry Takeaway shift, but I was like, this isn't about you actually. Like, this is not about you. This is about the person you're speaking to. So that sort of took the pressure off a bit.
We'll have Let's Talk About later, but we're starting off with my first section known as Timelines.
Ooh, okay.
So Timelines is my very, I want to say Charles Dickens. This is where I get bad with my authors, but it's my very Charles Dickens inspired section. We're going for your past, your present, your future. So as a poet, as a writer, what was your entry into writing and poetry? Like what was your past in poetry? Like how did this all come about for you?
When I was like 7 or 8, I wrote a poem and my mum entered it into a competition. I think it was Girl Talk magazine. And it didn't win, but it got like, it was National Poetry Day. They did like National Poetry Day for kids, and it was judged by Spike Milligan. And my poem was like one of the top 10, I think. And it was all about things that I liked that were yellow, which is very just sort of strange because I love the colour yellow as an adult. So it's really nice that at 7 or 8 I was writing about all these yellow things like bananas and buttercups, and it's framed in the house, and so that was like 7 or 8, and then I sort of did it a bit at school, but I didn't really like it that much at school. I think it was taught very much in like this is what poetry is and isn't, and found it harder. And then I did theatre at uni, and I remember writing with somebody a script, and they said, oh, you have a very like poetic style with how you write. And I didn't really know what that meant. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe it just sounds nice. But But then I became quite interested in like the rhythm of it and like how it flowed and then how it was spoken by an actor. And I was like, oh, there's something in this. And also a lot of it I'd taken from like everyday conversations or things that had been written in cards. I think cards are so poetic. And then I was really missing theatre when I first moved to London, and I just happened upon a poetry night, and I went in and I was like, this is cool. People are like performing, but they're not acting in the way that they're like being a character necessarily. They're sort of being themselves, maybe a different version of themselves. And they've written it, and I just thought that was really cool. So I signed up for a night which had a 3-month waiting list, which
Jesus.
It was called That's What She Said. And I just thought that was like...
No, yes, I do know of that.
I don't know if it's still running.
I know that Bridget Hart was involved in it, is involved in it.
Hey, that rings a bell, yeah.
But yes, no, That's What She Said. I'm aware of it. Never actually managed to get to it, but I know they did a fair bit around the country, yeah.
Yeah, they did. Well, the one I went to was at the book club in Shoreditch, and it was great. But because it was 3 months, I was like, oh, well, this is how poetry nights are, and I need to learn all my pieces. And then I freaked myself out. And I remember having loads of voice notes with one of my friends who's an actor, and she was like, I think you just need to slow down. And I was like, okay. Shared it, and then sort of got the intrigue about it and started going to different nights. And then I found a night in Covent Garden called Poetry Unplugged, and which I just loved because it was sort of, it felt like a similar crowd, like people that were trying it out or had been doing it for a while but were looking for community. And and that's sort of the journey in. Then lockdown happened, and that was just horrible, and lost all the community with the Poetry Unplugged, because the joy of it was that it was so in person and there wasn't anything online. And then went to some online poetry nights, but it just wasn't the same. I think everyone who's a poet will say this, who performs their work, like it's you're there for like how the piece lands in the room and the energy that the crowd give you, but also the energy that you can feel in yourself. And it was just hard. And you know, you're writing stuff, but you're then like judging yourself because you're sat with it for such a long time. And then sort of coming out of that period, I remember being sat in a pub in Brighton with my friend Phoebe, and we were just chatting about like, well, it feels like there isn't a night that we can find. What if we just started our own? And so we started our own night in Highgate, and it's called the Poetry Lounge, and it's been going for almost 2.5 years. And that feels like a really great thing that we're doing. And it also helps us keep writing and being part of the community, which is just amazing, really.
And that kind of nicely segues into the present of everything. So obviously you've got the poetry night, and obviously you've then been doing stuff at Space Takeaway, etc. So like, where are you with your writing and poetry at the moment? And also things like you mentioned starting off doing like some script stuff and more stage-based stuff. So like, is that stuff on pause, a hiatus? Is that a thing to come back to? Where are you at the moment with the writing and the performing and all of it?
Yeah, and all of it. I feel like what I'm trying to get better at is, I think I'm quite responsive. So I write notes about things that I see or hear that I'm like, oh, this is the start of something. And then I don't go back to it. And I really want to get better at editing and like putting the time in to be like, here's all these scribbles that I can barely read, and I'm going to now put them into a Word document or on a new sheet of paper, and I'm going to like look at it again the day after or the week after and try and like put it into something. I think the dream would be like working towards a pamphlet, but that's not going to happen if I don't let myself put the time in. And I think that's been like quite a big realization, like, oh, I think it's me. I think I'm blocking myself. And yeah, do workshops and then put the notes somewhere, and then want to sort of organize myself a bit more around that. And the script writing I haven't done since I was at uni, but I think I never say never.
Yeah, fair. And like,
yeah.
So obviously you've got the night you're running at the moment now. Like how are you finding that at the moment? Like how is it keeping it going, etc.? How is it for you, whether it's just in terms of like the producer, host person of like running it, or just the enjoyment you get from it? How is that going at the moment?
That's a good question. I think it's going really well. I think last year I left my job that I'd been in like a permanent capacity for 6.5 years, because I felt like there was something else I should be doing and I didn't know what it was. And I was like, but I feel like it's something to do with poetry and I feel like I need to be stood up more. I felt like I was sat down a lot and a lot in front of a screen. And I was like, I feel like I need to be in front of people. And so I've just tried to give myself permission over the last 6 months to like do different things and like figure out where I'm landing. And the Poetry Lounge has been amazing because it's been like the constant fixture. I know it's the first Wednesday of every month. It doesn't change. I know that sort of halfway through the month, I need to start thinking about putting it out there again, checking in with people, thinking about what I'm going to share. And so it's just been this amazing like home, which is also really nice to reflect on in terms of like, we made it. So it's like we made the home and I've been able to live there for a bit. And I think I get so much from hearing other people's work in the Poetry Lounge and seeing like new people come through with new energy every month and be like, I heard about you on Instagram, or like somebody told me about you. And it's just like, feels like it's just doing its thing without me needing to like push it too much. Although there's always more to do and there's always more ways that you can get out to people where they are. So but yeah, all in all, it's been, really helped ground me. I don't really know what I would have done without it.
And obviously with the Poetry Land, I'm liking, like, you guys have been doing a lot of stuff on Instagram with that. Like, you've been having, like, a lot of, like, regular posts, whether it's sharing your own poetry, other people's poetry. So, like, how important is the whole outside of the actual night part of the Poetry Land? Like, because you do seem to be getting a lot of people that are finding the Instagram and finding it for Instagram. So how important is the part of the night that's not actually at the night?
The night, yeah. I think it's super, it was so weird. I was thinking about this the other day. I think it's super important. I think when we first set it up, one of the things that we said was, this is about holding a space for people to share their work. And part of that is also hearing people's voices that can't be in the room and learning from different people's crafts. And so one of the things that we do, and we've done since the start on Instagram, is share a poem every Sunday that we have been enjoying. Maybe we've read it somewhere, maybe someone's recommended it to us, and sort of sharing it out with the community by way of being like, here's a gift from us. And I sometimes find the most helpful thing when I'm stuck is to like read a poem and just take a first line from it and not be so precious about like, it doesn't mean you're stealing someone's work. It actually is such a compliment because you're like, that spoke to me so much that I'm gonna like respond to it in some way. And recently I've just been trying like short videos where I've been recording myself saying the poem, mostly because I think it's what I love about open mic nights is like hearing words. I think there's such power in how words are spoken and like the rhythm that they take on their own. And secondly, I think I really enjoy doing it. And I think I was like, why am I not doing it? Am I worried that I'm being self-indulgent? But I'm not. And it's also okay to be like, I like doing this and I want to put it out there and I enjoy reading out loud. So why not?
Yeah, very nice. And like, if we're sticking on the Poetry Lounge, but also looking out to the future, obviously with the Poetry Lounge, I say obviously, people listening to this is not obvious, but obviously you've got the Poetry Lounge working with festivals soon. Yes?
We were part of Highgate Festival.
That one.
Community Festival, last month, which was great. Yeah.
And like, so like with doing stuff like that, like whether it's you individually or you as the night, such like, what do you want the future to be like? Are there any goals, dreams? Like you mentioned the pamphlet is one possible thing, but like, what is your future in poetry hopefully going to be?
Yeah. Well, I hope we're still going in like another 2.5 years. I think I'd love the Poetry Lounge to pop up in other places. Whether that's, I'm not based in Highgate, I'm based in South London. So I would love it to be in South London. Sort of, I'm like, its roots are where it is in the Boogaloo. But I think the way the night's hosted and the format of it, albeit open mic nights are very similar, I'd like to think that we could take it somewhere else and it could be met and it could reach other people. We did at the end of last year like poems from the Poetry Lounge where we just shared, I wrote up different people's poems that they shared it and we just put it on as like an online PDF, and that felt really good to do again for like, here's a record of some of the people. I think something I'd love us to do more of is like capture the night. We're not very good at it. And yeah, it's sort of putting another hat on to like the hosting and producing capture hat. And that's like such a key part, and it's not something you can necessarily do. You sort of need to source that or find somebody, which is why what you do is so good.
And like for you as an individual, then I just mentioned the pamphlet, like I'm guessing then obviously you want to be some level of published. Like, is it lots of publications in the future? Has that always been a dream? Was that been, what else is there that you want to do? Like, are you obviously with the kind of, I guess, theatre background there, like, is there any hopes or dreams of like, here is the Katie one woman show kind of thing, etc.?
I don't know. I mean, that would be amazing. I think like, I feel like years ago, I was always like, oh, maybe I could do that. But actually I did a course last year on fear, and like it was like a 6-month course. And before we'd even started, they were like, where would you love this to go? And I remember writing down, I was like, dare I say like a 1-woman show? And it wasn't a 1-woman show, but I did end up like documenting loads of stuff on my bedroom wall, and then I took the wall into like another space and then showcased what I'd been up to. So I guess it was a sort of 1-woman show, but it wasn't as like performative as maybe a 1-woman show would be. I think in terms of like publishing something, I think maybe I'd always loved the thought of that. I just thought that's not going to be me. I'm not good enough. That's not going to be right. And then I think what I've been learning is like, put the work in and maybe you could do it.
Yeah, for sure. And like, so like, are there any other dreams and hopes for the future, or is it also just level of just like, let's see what comes kind of vibe?
I think see what comes, but I think also I would love to publish something eventually. And now you've mentioned a 1-woman show, I'm like, maybe that could be a thing.
Perfect.
Watch this space.
Perfect. Well, with this timeline sections now finished, we're going to move on to our Let's Talk About section, where we will pick a topic and just go for an in-depth discussion about it that totally won't go on a tangent to something else.
Good, great.
As we vaguely mentioned in the timeline section, you've the whole like poetry around living outside of just the night, etc. And you mentioned obviously like during lockdown, the lack of community. Let's talk about community. So for you, what does community look like in poetry?
I think it looks like somebody recognizing you, no matter how small that interaction is, even if it's just like, hiya, nice to see you, or I heard your work last month and I really liked it. I think it's that like acknowledgement that you were present. And I think it's also people introducing people to each other. So sometimes it's really hard to like go up to somebody that you don't know and be like, hi, even though we're all human, and that's a very human need and like capability that comes naturally. There's nothing quite like somebody saying, oh, by the way, this is so-and-so, you should meet so-and-so because they're really interested in da-da-da. And then you can sort of make the choice whether you're going to be in a 10-minute conversation or a 2-minute conversation. But I think for me, that's what community feels like. It's that like recognition. And yeah, just like being warm where you can. Sometimes the world feels not very warm. And I think if we can do it 1-to-1, then that's a big win. Like
for you coming into the poetry, like how easy was it for you to like find community in the poetry scene?
I think once I started going to Poetry Unplugged, I think it was it felt a bit easier because it was every single week. So you sort of knew on a Tuesday when you turned up that you would probably recognise somebody. And I think once Phoebe and I had been going like a few weeks, we were like, oh, people recognise us and like we recognise people and let's say hello, and that felt really good. And then I think in lockdown it was harder because we didn't really have people's contact details. But then I'll never forget when we set up the Poetry Lounge, we were still on the night that's in Camden's WhatsApp, and the name has completely gone out of my head. Poetry.
Oh, the Goddamn Poetry Jam.
Goddamn Poetry Jam. And we were in the Goddamn Poetry Jam's WhatsApp group because that was one of the nights that we had gone to a couple of times coming out of the pandemic, where we were like, what is happening? And then we met some great people through that, and we posted in there and we were like, hiya, we came here a few months ago. We've not been back. We're setting up poetry night. Would anyone be up for coming? And like 2 people from the night came and performed. And I just remember being like, oh, one of them was a guy called Corey. And like, that meant so much because it was like, I think we had felt worried about posting because we felt like we've not been present. And like, who are we to now ask people to come to our night? But people were like, amazing. Yes, we'll come and support you. And that sort of became the like theme of how it always felt. And so we were like, oh, maybe we are in the community and maybe we can be part of making the community what it is. And maybe we've all got a contribution to make. And that felt really good. But we'll never forget that message back that was like, yeah, of course.
Nice. And then obviously as well, like I said, we talked about the whole Instagram and online side of it. So like, how important is the Instagram presence, etc.? Like obviously with social media being as it is, how is it how important is it, and B, how is it also navigating that kind of online world and space?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Sometimes I wish my Instagram was only logged in on the Poetry Lounge because we are only really, our main following is poets or people who or other writers or people who don't write poetry but love it in some way. And whereas my Instagram is also full of friends, but it's also full of lots of other things that are easy to like doom scroll on. And I think I get a lot of joy from like looking at other people's work on Instagram. That being said, sometimes I feel like I love reading an actual book and I'm like, I think I would get more out of just getting that person's collection or going to the library. And so it's a really like interesting balance. But I think we're finding that a lot of people find us through Instagram. Some people say like, I just like the look of your page, like visually, I just like the look of it. And that is really also nice to hear. And, you know, we do put a lot of thought and care into like how posts are presented and we don't always get it right. And there's definitely more we can do. But I think that part of it is really important. And being visible to people is really key.
No, I will definitely say you guys do a nice job on Instagram of having like nicely made posts, etc. Like I'm very aware that with a lot of the nights I'm involved with, whether it be directly involved in like process or things like everything goddamn poetry jam, there is some level of we've got the nice pictures, so that kind of works for the Instagram algorithm and all that kind of stuff. But like you guys do some nice like little like simple to read but nice laid out graphic stuff. And it's like, this is nice. There is thought and care in this, like, as is I've mentioned on the podcast and to other people just generally, one of my biggest bugbears in poetry is graphic design. Poets are not good at graphic design. And if we were, the scene would be so much better. But like, it's nice seeing that the Poetry Lounge is like really good with that stuff. But like on this online stuff, I feel like, at least in my experience, so many poets are going to nights and like adding each other on Instagram and we're following, etc. So to now almost go into a more serious question with this community aspect, how is it balancing that kind of, are we friends? Are we work colleagues? Where is that line? Where is that balance? How is that for you?
Yeah. Before I do that, I just want to say we're Phoebe and I are really fortunate that one of our friends is in brand and graphic design. Nice. And she was amazing when we first started because we got like brand colors and like we had a really good chat with her and she was like, it feels like you're very warm and I think this color would be good and this color and like this is how layout would work. And I've learned loads from Amy. So yeah, we definitely didn't do it alone. But she was another one where it was like she couldn't do enough to help us. And that's felt like a bit of a theme with Poetry Lounge. But going back to your question of colleagues and friends, it's really hard. And I don't want to think about it like colleagues, but it is. It's like, you want to be friends, but I want to always be like it's friends. But it also is this weird thing where sometimes you maybe don't speak to people at the poetry night because maybe you just can't get round or like something happens and then you're like, but I do want to be in touch with them again. So I'll follow them on Instagram and now, now I feel a bit awkward about it. But sometimes that's life and that's okay. But I've never thought about it as work colleagues. So maybe now, next time I go to a night, I'm going to be like, they're like the manager. They're running the show. Hopefully people don't see me like that. Maybe they do. I don't know.
Well, I guess for you then, like, how is it kind of like with meeting these people at nights? How is it like becoming friends? Like, I don't know whether, because I feel like there's some people that either you might have known beforehand or like people that you meet at the night. Like, how is that line between, oh, I've met you here, when do you become friends?
When are we friends? Yeah.
like when is it okay? Like, I know for me personally, I always had that vibe of like, I met someone at this night, we're following each other. Like, when am I okay just to like DM you and it not be creepy and weird kind of thing?
Yeah, no, that's... Or like, when can we just go for a drink?
Yes.
Yeah, that. I had this exact experience. I met somebody who I am now very good friends with, someone called Jess, at a poetry night in Bermondsey. And I said, oh, you should come to the poetry night I run. And she came. And then I remember getting home to my housemate and saying like, I've met this person called Jess and like, I really think we're going to be friends. And then I saw her again and I was like, and then she was like, and then we had this awkward conversation about the fact that we had both left the situation and thought maybe we could be friends, but we didn't know how to say to each other. And then somebody at some point said, we should go for a drink. We went for a drink and we were like, oh, okay, we're friends. And that's like like, that's quite an awkward story. But I think sometimes you just don't voice it in the way that we did. And you just sort of live in this land of assumption, but that also means sometimes you feel like you're a bit on like an inflatable in the water where you're not really sure if you're going to fall off or there's like a difference as well between like I'm being friendly, but we haven't like actually hung out yet. So I don't know. How do you feel?
I find it weird at times. I mean, especially given me and almost as proof now, level, I'd be like, cool, you're cool. Come, I'll put cameras in front of your face, etc. Like going for a drink seems like the smart way of doing it. I'm like, no, all this camera gear, etc.
Which really works. I think I'm very impressed.
It's a weird balancing act to do, and like, especially as well as host of a night as well.
Yeah.
So much of it is like, I'm having to be friendly because I'm running the night and you need a friendly host, etc. And it's that thing of like, it's the thing with a lot of the stuff of like, I always have a thing for me of like, I like meeting people at these poetry nights, but a thing of like, I need to hang out with you at a not poetry thing to know if we're actually really friends, because even if I'm just crowd or whatever level of like, I'm not saying that that's not who I am, but there is difference between Tyrone in real life versus Tyrone going to these poetry nights and being performer Tyrone, etc.
Yeah.
So definitely a little part of me is like, cool, you seem cool, but this is like...
We're in a very unique situation.
Yeah, like this is like, I think this for me is definitely level, this is a nice start, let's move away from this space, please, to then figure out if we're actually friends.
Yeah.
I don't say I would never, but like, I struggle to call people that I meet at just poetry nights and only poetry nights really good friends, because it's only at those nights. Like, I need to meet you outside of this to know how we are. So I want that to kind of be the thing.
Yeah, you need to ask someone on a friend date, and that's really hard as an adult. But you don't want to get rejected, especially if you might bump into them at a poetry night and they've said no to go for a drink with you.
It's also as well that thing of like, it's a weird thing as well of like, especially like going for drinks one-on-one with people, is the thing of like, I'm very aware that in so many of my friends, people I'm meeting at these nights being non-male, it's such a thing of like, I'm not coming on to you kind of thing, but also I'm very aware I am the cis male here who has got power in this scene or whatever, asking you for a drink, and it's like, this is weird now. This could be weird, etc. I don't like that.
Yeah, but you have an awareness, so I think it's fine.
But no, like, it is that thing. Like, I think then on the community thing, like, how is it in terms of like, obviously because so many of these nights, like we mentioned beforehand, are finishing late, etc. on weekdays, like how is it trying to actually find the time to become friends with?
Oh, it's hard. It is hard. I think as well, it depends if you're in at a night where it's the opposite side of where you live and you're sort of, you know, the night's overrunning, or you're already aware that it's going to take like an hour to get home, and and it's a Tuesday and you're like, oh, I've got this thing in the morning and I feel like I'm not actually being as present as I'd like to be, and I'm actually going to shoot off as soon as it finishes. I think that can sometimes feel like at odds with, oh, but I felt like there was a good connection with that person, or like I really want to tell that person that I loved their work, and oh, but there's a queue with them, or like now they're in the loo, or like, oh, I don't know where they are. And then there's like, how will I find them? Which is also sometimes how Instagram comes in, and where you can hopefully send a really genuine message, which is, I'm really sorry I didn't manage to catch you, but I wanted to say to you, I so loved your work. And I think a message like that anyway is never going to make anyone feel anything other than really valued and heard. And I think there's something about being honest as well. Like, I just had to get off. But I want to pick up on the point you made about when you're the host as well. And you're I don't know about you, but I sort of have this, you are yourself, but you are also like Katie, the host. And I need to make sure the night is running and that people are all right. And what's the time and how's the venue? And there is that element of also like, I will be with you soon, but I'm not like fully myself at the moment. So maybe we could pick this up another time. But how we organise that logistically. The dream is when you can hang around, I think.
I fully feel that, especially because I will do, like, in running process, I will get there early and think of, like, because I'm doing all the shit I'm doing, it's like, I'll get here early and it's like, I now need to set up all the cameras and make sure all that stuff's running. And it's like, I don't have time to talk yet. And then when the night's over, got to pack it all up, etc. as well. Like, by the time it's all packed up, it's like, I'm tired now. I've come straight from work. I will socialise with you in later kind of thing. Is definitely a little bit of that vibe sometimes.
And about sometimes having to have like really kind boundaries and, say I am doing, the other things that happen where you're doing the list and making sure the performers are in the right order and that, somebody's early and I want to make sure they're all right. But equally, I need to have just a bit of space to get centered, and I can never still work the mic out. So there's always that as well where I'm like, I just need to practice the mic and that the levels are right and that sort of thing, which Phoebe is a lot better at than me.
Oh, having that social battery is definitely a thing. And like, even then, like, whether it's performing or hosting, that vibe of like, well, I'm performing this. So I've had it, and this is a weird tangent on this as well, but like, I've had it so much on dating apps when people know that I'm a poet and have like found my poetry videos on YouTube, etc. So they've watched a poetry video and I think there's a level of, they expect that Tyrone to appear. And it's like, that was me performing. That was very heightened and not what you're going to get every day kind of thing. And like, yes, it's a part of me, but that's not my everyday thing. Like when I'm just, I think, so what's always been funny for me is that whenever I get to know people more than just friends, they kind of go like, oh, you're a lot more shady than I expected you to be kind of thing. And that stuff, like, I'm a good host. I say questioning, but like,
good host.
I'd like to think I'm a good host, and that thing of like, I'm really good and friendly. And I'm like, I'm very knowledgeable of what's happening on the scene so I can keep track of what people are doing, etc. And like, I'm good at that stuff. And then kind of people talk to me and it's like, oh, he's bitchy as well. He's got lots of opinions too, kind of thing.
How dare he?
But yeah, I think it's always that thing of like, this is a version of me that's worked for this night, and it's not me, but that's not all of me.
Yeah, I'm not going to show you my full. I think sometimes it's hard. People think you only have one side, and it's like, I'm multifaceted. There's like a few different things going on, and care needs to be given in this situation versus this situation. And yeah, particularly with hosting. And I think you're the same. It's something I really care about. And my worst thing would be if somebody left and was just like, I felt really unsupported. I didn't feel very welcome. And I thought you were rubbish or whatever, because that would mean like, I've not done a good job here and I've made someone feel unsafe. And that's not what anyone wants.
What I'm with all this like kind of building community stuff as well, I think, how do you find that balance of obviously in meeting so many people at these poetry nights, by the nature of their poetry, they might reveal some very serious stuff at these poetry nights, and that thing of like, I now know that this poet came out to their mum and got disowned and are going through this mental health stuff. I don't know what their favourite colour is. I don't know what they like to do for fun, etc.
Yeah.
But we're building a friendship from the most traumatic part backwards almost. So like, is that an issue for you? How is that balancing that?
That's such a good question. And I don't know if I've ever really thought about it. I think it's quite, I think if I can sense, again, I'm thinking about being in like a host role more than as like a fellow poet or like a punter, but I think I've never really dug into when it's felt, that there's hurt there and pain. I've never dug into that with anyone. It's been more like, I really appreciated that you shared that, and thank you. But yeah, I guess actually maybe it's that a friendship has never formed in that way, but it's a really good thing to bear in mind because you do. And then you're like, yeah, but I don't know what you have for breakfast and I don't know where you live. That sounds more creepy than I meant it to. But like, you know, those are the sorts of things you find out about people quite quickly. Maybe. Maybe you don't find out what people have for breakfast. I had cold porridge, if anyone is wondering. It's nicer than it sounds.
It's one of the things of like, especially I think in some of these, whether it's artsy or liberal scenes or whatever, I think there's a level of we want these deeper, more serious connections as a whole. But I also, and not to say that my friendships I have aren't deep and all that kind of stuff, but like I look at some of my close friends and there's like, we talk about anime a lot, we talk about music a lot, and it's actually not always that, like there is space for the deepness, but it's not always that deep, and it's a thing of like, oh yeah, I don't actually need all of this sometimes, like it's nice that you are willing to share it, but also, no, I will have friendships that are purely based over, we will talk football and nothing else, and that is a fully fine friendship, so like, I think that's the thing to bear in mind or like have too, but like, I guess as well, like, how do you find it in terms of like, especially with friendships and that kind of stuff of like, is there a difference for you when you were performing and talking and hanging out with people versus I've just come here to watch it as audience member?
I feel like I always feel a bit jealous if I'm there just as an audience. That sounds awful, doesn't it? I feel like I miss like sharing when I can't share. And actually it often happens that it's at a night where like people are picked at random and then you maybe don't get to share, which is also fine because we've chatted about this before, there's like a decision that you have to make as a host and then both ways, like people feel like let down. In my way, people are like, oh, all the tickets were sold out and I'm annoyed. And like, you know, in the other way you have it like live, but then it's so hard. And it's like, if you could program everyone, we'd be there till like 3 a.m. and then everyone would be really tired and you'd have to provide like beds and, you know, sleeping bags. And that's not the poetry open mic night.
Use an example. With me going to nights, etc., I always feel that like, especially like promoting a night, but even just in friends and wanting to talk to someone afterwards, I feel like if I've performed or like been part of a night in that kind of a way, it's a lot easier to then talk to someone afterwards and be friends. I'm like, oh look, we're on the same, not same level, but like done the thing together, it's fine. Whereas if I'm just a random audience member, I even I kind of get a little bit like, even me, they're a little bit weird of like, oh, I'm just a random audience member. Doesn't like, yes, again, everyone likes a compliment, but like the compliment carries more weight from someone you've seen perform and been part of the open mic. And similarly as well, that thing of like befriending someone, it's like, I know I kind of almost internally do it a little bit as well of like, I find it easier to befriend another poet who I've just seen perform versus, oh, you're just a random audience member who has not performed yet or I've not seen perform at all. So
how do you find that? Yeah. I find that really interesting. I sometimes find it more powerful, meaningful when it's somebody who is an audience, who's maybe not yet that comfortable with poetry and has maybe come and then they say, do you know what, I really felt something in what you said, because then I'm like, oh, that's maybe cut through in like a different way, in a way that that person is not familiar and it's landed and I think sometimes when I'm being an audience, when I was first starting out and going to like different nights, I think I felt, and I still do, like you feel quite shy going up to somebody that you are also like, oh my God, they're a performer and they're really good. And they're probably going to be like, who are you? Random audience. But you feel like so compelled to say something. And I think what I've learned as well since performing more is that actually a lot of performers are like, it means so much to be seen by the audience. And so I think it's about that like level of comfort and also like just acknowledging that everyone wants to feel something and everyone will have experienced different things in their life. And you might not even know that a poem that you share in that moment really speaks to somebody on the back row because they've just gone through it and they might be sat there thinking like, no one's ever going to feel how I'm feeling, or like, And that can be good and it can be bad, but could be like, no one's ever going to feel the joy that I'm feeling right now. And then somebody gets up and does this poem about all the things they're really joyful about. And like that connection that can be made. I think as well, sometimes there's something to be said for like the very fleeting connections that are made like in a night and that's it. And it doesn't need to be like a long-term sustained friendship. And being like, that was just nice because it was nice. And that's that.
I mean, that's almost not going into a different topic, but that idea of like, I think friendships can be so many different things. And like, not every single friend you have is going to be that person you talk to every day, etc.
About everything.
No.
Yeah.
Like I really enjoy it and I'm very pleased and glad that I've got so many friends across like the UK that are like, oh, if I go to Manchester, I've got someone I can hang out with for the day and we can talk and we can catch up and it's fine. And then I won't see them again for a year or 2 years or whatever. And that's fine. And I like having that. You don't have to be like, not every friend's going to be your everyday person, etc.
No.
Like,
and there wouldn't be enough time.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's definitely moments I go over to some of these nights where it's like, not that I don't have time for more friends, but it's like, I've got enough people. I have enough. I can't fit everyone in my life already. Yeah. I don't want to have to make another person I'm not going to be able to see kind of thing.
Yeah, I know. Also, sometimes I've recently in the last couple of months made a couple of new friends and that's felt really nice to like, and they've not in any way replaced old friends, but it's just they've given me something like a bit different. And maybe it's because they have also been job hunting, or maybe it's because they also were doing a course on fear, or maybe it's because they also I've got into like a bit more movement practice recently, and like maybe it's because of that, and like that's fine. And I think sometimes we can feel like, oh, that means I've been rejected, and it's not that at all. And it's like balancing that, I guess.
Well, like coming to the end of this kind of communities talk, it's actually then like, obviously, again, I think a lot of it has been mostly positive with all this stuff. So like, is there anything that communities could be doing better or working on in terms of like the poetry community, at least? Like, is there anything that we're not doing that we could be doing?
I think hosts could talk more. I think we're not very good. I think like the host community, I don't really know that many hosts, and I certainly don't know things that have gone wrong. I think it's very easy to be like, yeah, it was great, but there's always stuff that goes wrong, or there's always stuff that makes you feel uncomfortable, that you're like, oh, I really am not sure if I dealt with that in the right way, if I introduced that in the right way, if I set the right scene, I didn't mention this, what does that say? And like, I think if as hosts we could be a bit more giving of the stuff that we're learning and supportive, I think that would only strengthen the community, really.
I've always been aware that so much of this scene is, I like the word guerrilla. Guerrilla is the way I've been phrasing it a lot now, but like some level of guerrilla or underground, but like so much of it is that, which is lovely and nice, but it also means that so many of these nights start with like no training or anything. And not that it should always have training, but like you're starting night and like, well, I'm just going to host it. And it's like, but you've not hosted before. How do you know what you're going to do? And like, I've watched enough hosts, I'll figure it out. And it's like, to be fair, most people do.
Yeah, most
but
people
it is
do.
that just vibe of like, yeah, but I'm not prepared for if it goes wrong. And like, I think especially in this scene, because it is so guerrilla, there's so much of it that is, it's guerrilla, it's grassroots, it's all that. So it's like, well, if I'm hosting it, that means then I must also be producer and all of that. So I've got multiple hats now in one. I was actually talking to Kid and Nancy on this podcast a couple of months ago now. Jesus Christ, time flies. I was talking to Kid and Nancy on this podcast about the idea of like, he wants to at sometimes just be a host and like just be brought in to host a thing. And it's like, so many other scenes do that.
Yeah.
You have someone that is like, you are trained to be a host. Cabaret does that, comedy does that, etc. Poetry, no, if you're hosting, you're also producing it, you're also running the night, you are the night.
You are probably also performing at the night. Yeah, there's a lot of different hats that you wear, which is great. But there's also, I think, a lot we could learn and give to each other. Particularly, if you're like, I have not hosted before, or like, I don't know what to do with this bank account, or like, this producing thing's gone wrong. yeah, I think sometimes, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's pride or not wanting to get in people's way or, but I think that could be better, definitely.
I know that, I'm not saying back in the day because it's still active now, but like there was a Facebook, is a Facebook group for like poetry promoters, and like pre-pandemic, which was also when people were using Facebook more, that was a very good space. But like it feels like, at least in London, if not all of the UK, people have moved away from using Facebook as a regular thing, and that group is kind of, whilst it's still there and can be used, not helpful. And you need more spaces that kind of keep up with the modern day of like, we need almost a poetry host WhatsApp group kind of thing, just to have like a space to do that. We should do this. I was
just thinking we should have a WhatsApp group.
I've currently got a Love Island WhatsApp group. That is what I've got. I've gone for Poets Love Island group before I've gone for Poets hosting group.
Okay. If you've got that, then I think, the Poets hosting group needs to happen.
That, like, it's good to have that space. Now, obviously, it's the thing of like, you're not expecting it to be active all the time. You're not sending memes back and forth kind of thing, but having that space, like obviously we've got other people you can just occasionally talk to and go like, I know me and Ellie will every now and then talk over hosting stuff and ask a couple of questions. Even the things of like, especially as we have features at our nights, we'll kind of go like, do you know this person or whatever? Because someone's asked like, can I feature your night? Like, do you know them? Can I get some more info on them? Etc. Like, I feel that with the community, the good thing is a lot of people are open and like, if you ask me something, I will happily answer.
Yeah.
But we don't
voice it.
Broadcast and advertise that a lot.
Yeah. It's weird. Sometimes I love human beings, but sometimes we're so weird.
I think there's almost a level of it's a given. Like when you didn't ask me kind of thing, it's like, but I didn't know I could ask you kind of thing. And
then it's like a spiral that you get in. It's like, oh, you should have just said. And it's like, why didn't I just say? Yeah.
I think community is definitely in a good space. There's obviously still more that can be done. I think as I kind of wrapping this all up, I think there's a level of like, at times I do think some people in the poetry community can think it's all sunshine and rainbows, etc. And almost going back to that whole, not quite work colleague, but the whole friends work colleague stuff, I do think at times people could assume that, oh, everyone is good and perfect, therefore anyone I talk to will be fine. And it's like, no, you're still humans. Not everyone here will be a good person. There will be some bad nights, bad people, etc. Yeah. It unfortunately happens.
It does. And that's the role of the host as well, I think, often to be mindful and be very aware of that.
But overall, I think they're in a good space.
They're in a good space.
Well, it's now with our Let's Talk About done, we're going to move into our slow fire question section as we go to the end.
I've been excited for this.
So slow fire questions, as I've said to a few people, is basically I've got my whole quick fire questions where I've got my whole list of 100 questions I ask people. But with that, as the name suggests, it's very quick. We don't go into depth of any of these questions, etc. So slow fire questions is our way to kind of pick apart some of these questions and have a proper discussion about them. As I will keep saying, some of these questions are more serious than others. So some of these discussions may be more serious than other discussions. Nevertheless, we aim for about 5 of them each time. So let's start off with, give me a random number between 1 and 100, please.
24.
So starting off with then, is there a slam poet?
Was this like, is there a slam poet in general in life?
So I do it as in general. So at least in my experience, when I was coming up, there was a kind of, not stigma, stigma of like being a slam poet, being known as a slam poet. Okay. And like, there were poets that they mainly do slams. Their priority is doing slams. Their poetry is fit and built for slams. It's almost purpose built to win a slam. And like with that, whether it's the style they're doing, whether it's the topics they're talking about, they're all very much built for that kind of slam style. I want to say it's come from a lot of the American poets because that became a big influence on a lot of people in the way that they do slams, etc. To that kind of idea of like, oh, this is a slam poet. This poet just does slams and goes to win, etc. And like, I think with that as well, it kind of goes almost against some of the spoken word vibes of it feeling less authentic.
Okay, yeah. So your question is more, are you just a slam poet?
We're like, well, does that person exist? Like, is there someone that is literally just a slam poet? They just focus on doing slams. That's their only priority.
That's a good question. And because I have limited actual slam knowledge, but I think I would say I don't think anyone is ever just one thing. And I think there'll be elements of, regardless of if somebody's focusing their craft on slam poetry, there'll be stuff that they're aware of or writing or reading that is different to slam, that is informing the slam, even if it's like I'm reading the news or like I'm reading joke books or I'm reading cookery pages in the weekly magazine or whatever it might be. So I think I'd say no, there's not just a slam poet.
That's fair. So I do a lot of slams, and I notice trends that happen in slams. There's definitely like slam poems more than slam poets. Like,
yeah, that's a nice way to look at
like
it.
there are definitely, like, even just on my stuff, there are poems of mine I would do at a slam that I wouldn't. There are poems of mine I would do at an open mic that I wouldn't do at a slam, because it's not going to work with so much of the slams being very quick reactive, get a high score, get the poem straight away. Some of my open mic poems or other poems won't work in a slam.
Yeah.
With that as well, things of like, with slams being judged by the audience, a lot of it can be, I agree with the point you're making versus it's the best written thing I've heard, etc. My go-to example, which is a bit basic, is that thing of, if someone has a poem about their parent dying, you're not going to give it a low score kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think they're definitely poems.
Hopefully not. Yeah.
I mean, there was one time I went to the Genesis Poetry Slam, and they didn't get a low score, but so there's a poet that went up that literally said, so my mum got killed by my stepdad earlier this week, so I wasn't sure if I was going to come here, but I wanted to honour my mum. And it's like, that's a lot to say before a poem.
Oh my God, yeah.
And that wonderfully, and I will say this on camera because I can do this, that wonderfully awkward thing of like, the poem wasn't that good. But I don't want to, but you've gone through. Well,
that's different though. Yeah. You were like, I'm holding you as a human being. And oh my God, that trauma. And and I'm holding you as a poet. And it's like, where do you want to be? I don't want to say judged, but what, yeah. Am I
it's a slam, so it is being
poem?
Judged.
Yeah, or am I judging this? And if I'm judging you as a human being, then of course, like but that's separate. And I think sometimes that's really hard to be like, that's a separate, and I find it in life sometimes where I'm trying to get better at being like, I'm upset about that, and that is separate to this other thing that's going on for you. And I have to see them as separate, otherwise I'm getting tangled in this. And I think that applies to so many different things, whether it's like work or relationships, friendships, nights. And that's also, yeah, I think it's actually like a thing we have to learn how to do and not be like, now I'm a terrible person. Because it's like I'm holding both, but just I'm also holding myself in this. Or the competition in the slam.
Very well said. Give me another number, please.
71.
71. Then we're going to, can you buy happiness?
No.
Why not?
Because everything that most things that make me happy are completely free.
Fair play.
Yeah.
Like, with the follow up, then, like, does money help though?
I think like having like the ability to exist like helps, like a roof and, you know, like those sorts of things. Yes, I think that has to give you your baseline. But I think in terms of like your general enhanced happiness or how you feel in yourself, if those basic needs are met, maybe a little bit. Like one of the things I love doing is like having a coffee with someone. And obviously if we're thinking about it like really matter of fact, it's like, yes, I do need money to buy the coffee. But I also think there's something so nice, but I'm obsessed with the sky, like looking at the sky is free, and trees and other people's company. So I think a little bit helps. But the dream is that we we are happier because we're all looked after in some way or another.
I feel that like money can't in of itself buy happiness, but I'm also aware things of like having money can alleviate some of the stresses in life, etc. Like so much of my life has been stress in my life has been caused by like financial issues and worrying about, oh, I've only got this much money to last me until the end of the month, etc. Therefore, not having that stress is like, oh, this is nicer. Doesn't guarantee happiness in of itself, but at least takes away some of the lesser things. As was said beforehand off camera, a level of money does mean that I have bought new mics, we've got a new setup for process, etc. So whilst it's not bought happiness, it's enabled me to then do things that will then bring the happiness. So like it can help, it can always help things, it makes things easier, but just money in of itself is not going to be enough kind of thing.
Yeah, like, you know, being like, oh, if I spend £50 on this thing, I will be happier. It's like happiness comes from like, it comes inward, I think, and connection.
Yeah. Another number, please.
12.
Cool. We are now going to go to, go-to karaoke song.
Oh, Tina Turner, Proud Mary.
Are you a big karaokeer?
Yes. Do you know what? I always feel like, I do. I really like
Own it.
I do like karaoke. I wouldn't ever suggest it, I don't think. But I really like it, yeah. And what I love about that song is I think it's like, there's so much to it and it feels quite like theatrical and suddenly it's like, da-da-da, like it's just, you can really get into it. And I feel like it's a real crowd pleaser. And if anyone doesn't like it, then I'm just a bit like, well, that's a shame for you.
Have you been recently and are you a good singer?
I am good at singing on my own when nobody's around. I wouldn't, I can hold a basic tune, but I wouldn't be releasing any CDs that would sell anytime soon if people still buy CDs.
And like, have you been recently?
Recently singing?
Karaoke.
Oh, I was going to say I did sing this morning. Karaoke. I last went in December.
Yeah.
It's not that long ago. Yeah, it was good. I requested Proud Mary.
Nice.
And owned it when it came on.
No, I am, as my friends will say, I'm a sucker for karaoke. I love some karaoke. I will do that way too easily, way too happily. My friend Rebecca Cooney has had a fair few birthdays where it will be drinks and then go to a karaoke bar afterwards, etc. And each time I will be the person that will be by the karaoke machine all night in that thing of like, I will both be I have taken it upon myself to help produce this night, etc. Therefore, I'll make sure everyone's got it on. I will know how the karaoke machine works, so you don't have to worry about it. I will be that person. But also, I will have enough songs in there that are like, cool, if there's a bit of a lull, I will come there. I will add something in there. I love a karaoke. I enjoy it far too much.
What's your go-to?
So if I can get someone to do it with me, my go-to be American Boy, Estelle, and Kanye West. I love doing that Kanye West rap. I literally have midway through a date once because they were playing it in the bar, kind of gone like, date was going well. I was like, no, I'm sorry. I need to do this for myself now. So midway through date, did the Kanye West rap, then went straight back to the date. And it's like, it had to be done.
Just had to be done.
Yeah.
And how did the date go down?
It was a good date. We had a second date, so it didn't turn them off. This admittedly was before Kanye West was as bad as he is now, but
yeah,
they're like, if it's just myself, I don't like my vibe. I can't sing. I'm not good at holding a tune, but my vibe is I'm good at remembering the words quite a lot. So I like having more rap-based stuff, and what's been fun is doing the rap verse in a pop song, etc. Coming in and giving that energy is like a really good vibe. Like, I haven't done it at karaoke yet, but like doing the Tiny Temper verse and Rita Ora song, R.I.P. would be great. I've done the Wycliffe part or Hips Don't Lie, etc. a fair bit as well. So just coming to that vibe is the vibe I aim for a lot.
Maybe we need to bring karaoke to a poetry night.
So not one of my questions, but with the karaoke thing, then like doing other people's poems, how do you feel about that? Because obviously you have at Poetry Lounge, you obviously encourage that you can also not just do your own poems, you can bring other people's poems. So in a night which is built around that, how would you feel that would work?
A night around just sharing other people's poems.
So almost a karaoke night, but for poetry.
Oh, I think that would be great. I think that would be so good. There's something about, like, I don't know if it takes the preciousness off, or maybe that's not quite the right word, about reading a poem and then reading it out loud that's not yours and feeling able to, or taking joy in saying it in a way that you're interpreting it, which is really lovely. And I think actually I would love to see that, like a poetry karaoke where somebody was like, I wonder what the go-to poem would be.
What was fun was I actually had to miss it because I was actually doing a feature gig at the same time, but my friend Jake Wild Hall, for his birthday 5-6 years ago, had a poetry night for his birthday where he got all of us to do each other's, he asked for people to do each other's poems, etc. So I think one of my vibes with karaoke and like a poetry karaoke thing is, and this is where it's a hard sell for an audience, but it'd still be fun to do, is like, I want to see people doing the poems that I've heard other people doing, etc. Like, as much as doing a K-Tempest poem would be fun, I want to hear you doing my poem and me doing your poem, kind of thing.
I would love that.
That's what I'm like. That's the more fun thing for me, is seeing that vibe.
Yes, that would be great. Because I also think we would learn a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I would learn a lot from hearing my poem read by you. Because you would put the pauses in different places and the poem would take on a whole new identity. And it's also the thing of like, I don't watch myself back. So I'm like, how do I know if I've done that right, or have I given enough attention to that word? Or
I don't want that many poetry workshops, but like when I do, I like doing that. Like when I was doing poetry workshops, I think what was nice was, so Jacob Samleroy is one of the people that taught me a fair bit, and like, whilst doesn't do it all the time, he would every now and then get you to give your poem to someone else and then they read it out so you can almost hear it back in that way. You can hear it. And even if, because like, I know at least some of my poems level of like, I've just typed the wrong words. Some of it's level of, I just literally missed that I wrote the wrong word there, kind of thing. But like, it's nice hearing how it sounds to someone else's mouth and a thing like, okay, no, it like, sometimes, this is still a good poem, etc. And like, also some of it as well, a level of like, it's, I can hear my own voice and like, no, this works only when I say it, because I say that particular word this specific way. Like, whilst I'm not a big rhymer, things of like people's pronunciations mean that, these words rhyme in my accent, but not in your accent, kind of thing, which is always a fun, interesting one to play around with as well.
I love that as an exercise, like swapping poems. And as well, that you would be like, why have I used that word? Or like, oh my God, I've used that word so many times and I just hadn't realised.
That's for sure. We'll do 2 more questions, so give me another number, please.
46.
46, we are going for, what was the first poetry night you went to?
It was That's What She Said, yeah.
So in terms of like when you went to it, like, were you just looking for a poetry night, or was it something that just came about at random?
I think I used to work near Old Street, and I can't remember if I like went into the book club and saw it in there or somebody told me about it, but it was definitely because I used to work semi nearby. And then I remember somebody saying like, that's quite a big one. That it's not usual to have like a 3-month waiting list. And I was like, oh, okay, well, there is. And like, I am on the waiting list, and like, that's what they've said. But yeah, that was the first one. That was like, oh God, like 6 years ago.
And now our last question. Give me one last number, please.
100.
So yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, how cool are you? Let's talk about your coolness to end this whole thing.
I think I said 7, didn't I? 7?
What makes you a 7 coolness?
A 7 coolness. I feel like I used to think of being cool as being like somebody that didn't really care, as in like that was my school. You know, there was like the cool group, and that's because they pretended like they didn't really care, but they probably did care. But they just gave off this air of like, we don't really care and we're just going to smoke outside and not go to lessons. And I think what I've learned about being cool is like, I think it's about just being cool with yourself.
So you're only 7 cool with yourself.
I know. I feel like that's actually quite low. Maybe it's more like an 8. You don't want to be too big-headed. So I think I just went for 7. I feel like there's friends, but I'm like, you guys are cool. Like, you know. But yeah, maybe I'm going to go 7.5.
Like I find coolness a weird one because I think it obviously changes from situation to situation and all that kind of stuff. Like, I will have moments where, like, again, I'm looking around as we're filming in my house. I'm looking around and it's like, oh, I've got so much anime bullshit that, like, in so many scenarios makes me less cool, etc. But also into the right people, it's like, no, that's really cool for them kind of thing. And, like, this is the thing of, like, no, this is, like, it's that thing of, like, I enjoy this thing, but I also enjoy these things as well. And, like, are we saying this takes away my coolness and this adds it? I don't know the rules in that kind of thing. It's a weird one. And, like, in that same way as well of, like, I know, and hosting wise, I have a lot of people that keep saying, like, oh, you can seem really cool on stage. It's like, I don't know what the fuck I did on stage. I can't tell you what I said. I know I filmed it back so I can watch it back, but I don't know what I did. So I don't know what was cool or whatever worked, etc. Yeah,
it's actually a really unhelpful word. Like when, because sometimes it's used to describe. I used to wear sometimes. Yeah, I like bright colors and patterns that clash sometimes. People are like, that's just so cool and edgy, and I'm like, it's not. It's just me going, I would like to wear this orange top and this green jacket, and I'm cool with that. I'm like, I'm happy with that. I'm going to wear it. I'd much rather someone said, like, I just think you're really interesting or kind or something other than cool. But yeah, maybe 7.5.
Fair play. Well, that is the end. As we come into probably the end of the podcast, thank you for joining me on this.
Thank you very much.
We have a camera here for you. If you want to tell anyone, if you want to be found online or anything, you can tell people where to find you online, etc.
Yes. Ooh, you can find me on Instagram. Annoyingly, my name is Katie with 2 E's, Katie, Dunst, Dunstt. Maybe I was doing that cool thing where I shortened my surname and added 2 extra letters, but now I just feel like it's quite embarrassing and I have to say to people, oh no, it's actually got 2 E's and 2 T's. That's how you can find me. And then the night that I run is called the Poetry Lounge on Instagram. We're the Poetry Lounge London. If you forgot about the extra letters, I'm also just in the bio, Katie with an IE, 2 E's. You can find me on there.
Perfect. I am Tyrone Lewis, as we probably said beforehand. Again, it's been freaking over 20. There's been a number of episodes. I've said this a few times. I should have a rehearsed thing. I don't have a rehearsed thing. I just have this is the thing. The thing is this podcast. There'll be a link tree. You can find all the things on there. But I will end the podcast the same way I end my poetry night, and I will steal it. My favourite Irishman, Joel Orteson. Love you all. Now fuck off. Goodbye.